Introduction to Personality Psychology, Part 1 of 2, Professor Michael Botwin, California State University, Fresno. Welcome to Personality Psychology. Personality is one of the grand areas of the field of psychology. It's considered one of the classic areas. It discusses the grand theories of human nature. I became fascinated with personality psychology when I took a course in it as an undergraduate at Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan, where I did my undergraduate work. Actually, it was a pretty lame course in personality, and I hope that my course is substantially better. But the professor had the insight to assign an extra credit paper where we could talk about a theorist who was not covered in class. I did something totally studenty. I went to the library and I looked in the card catalog. Yes, that's the card catalog. It used to be in index cards with all the books in the library. We don't have those anymore. And I did a very studenty thing, as I said. I picked up the cards, looked through them, and found that one theorist had more books than anyone else. Wanting to make the paper a relatively easy project, I decided to pick that theorist to write about, and that changed my life. That theorist was Hans Eysenck, a German-born British psychologist who developed a theory of personality that had biological substrates. It fascinated me. And I had an intellectual epiphany that I wanted to be a personality psychologist based on reading Eysenck's work. So I changed my career aspirations from wanting to be a clinical psychologist to being a personality psychologist. That probably was the single best thing that ever happened to clinical psychology. And I have been very happy as a personality psychologist who studies the basics of human nature. Originally, I started out studying personality traits, was very interested in Eysenck's work, but kind of went with the flow in graduate school and became known as a Big Fiver. Now most of the work in my laboratory has to do with evolutionary psychology issues, but always from a personality framework. So I really don't think I'm going to turn all of you into personality psychologists. I don't need the competition. But whatever area of psychology you end up going into, I hope you take it informed with a personality perspective. So let's talk a bit about my intellectual love, personality psych. We're all personality psychologists at some level. Most of us just don't have formal training in that area. I call it a couple of things. One, I call it the mom problem. My mother is an eminently wise woman, and whenever I show her the results from one of my research projects, what I typically get is, well, if you would have told me about this before you started your research project, I could have saved you tons of time and your poor students all that effort by just telling you how the world works. The thing with my mom being a very wise woman is she's usually right, but unfortunately, when I send a paper off to a conference or a journal, a citation to "my mom said so" won't cut it. So we have to approach this from a formal scientific perspective. The other analogy I use is of the Monday morning quarterback. And you guys probably all know Monday morning quarterbacks, and some of you might be that type of breed of individual. They're the person that knows everything about what's going on in football, they watch the games religiously, and they believe they have greater insights to the game than the coaches and the players and the other professionals. And it's always easy to call the game after it's happened. A lot different than when it's going on. So there's a lot of people that do Monday morning quarterbacking and personality psychology. And the thing is, we're pretty right when we talk about personality at a lay level, which I think is actually a very good thing. If you think about it, one of the things that we do as human beings is talk about other people, and typically we do that in the context of their personality traits. When we talk about who's done what to whom, a lot of times it's done using personality descriptive language. So-and-so was very nice to his partner. So-and-so is caring and kind. Somebody else might be a mean, nasty SOB. There are technical words for that one. But we all use personality psychology on a regular basis. It's just that we don't use the formal scientific version. In our research program, we study romantic relationships, and I often tell people to think about potential partners in the context of personality traits, like the 5-factor model of personality. And think of how much you know if you have knowledge of just these few traits. Are they outgoing and extroverted, or withdrawn and shy? Are they agreeable and friendly, or quarrelsome and aggressive? Are they conscientious or unconscientious? Are they emotionally stable, or are they emotionally unstable, or what we also call neurotic? That one will drive you crazy. And then finally, are they open to new things, new ideas, or do they like to conform to usual habits? None of these are right and wrong. They might be right or wrong for you individually, but if you're very outgoing and your partner is very shy and introverted, it's going to cause you some problems. You're going to want to go out and hang out with lots of people and socialize, and your partner is going to want to stay home under the covers, or vice versa, depending on your traits. So you're not going to be happy. And we found in our research, people generally map onto their partners, and to a lesser degree their friends, based on their personality characteristics. So we use this information all the time. There's lots of popular views on personality. Here is a cartoon showing the Toothpaste personality test. You have the impulsive person who grabs it, squeezes from the middle. You have the thrifty person. Why they're prone to depression, I don't know. I would say they're probably just extremely conscientious. You have the stubborn person, who the cartoon says is slow-witted, who squeezes from the top of the tube. And then you have the person who's probably not very conscientious, but the cartoon says they're antisocial, and since it doesn't seem like the tube is touched, they have bad breath. How accurate that is in the scientific study of personality is a whole nother ballgame. Here is one that applies mainly to women. I'm going to only say mainly. That your personality is based on the shape of the end of your lipstick tube. I won't go through this one. You can look at it on your own for fun. I have no idea who the Teen Titans are. Obviously, it's some type of cartoon, but I would imagine each one of these characters has their own personality, and you can actually take a popular test to find out which Teen Titan you are. Finally, in terms of our cartoons, and you'll learn over the semester, I do like throwing a few cartoons in. We have the type A personality, who climbs the mountain because it's there and tenaciously gets to the top, versus the type B personality that sits at the bottom of the mountain and finds that it's a great way to prop yourself up and relax a little bit. Actually, for you type A people, it's not the hard work that gets the type A people and leads to cardiovascular disease. It's the hostility that goes with it. Type A people don't like working hard, don't enjoy their jobs, but they do it anyway. Well, let's go way back. In fact, later in the semester, I will give you a history lesson on personality psychology and the history of it, and what some people would say the prehistory of it is as well, to a Greek, Theophrastus, who was a follower of Aristotle. He's one of the first people to write about personality, at least in Western European works. I don't know if I've never seen anything about ancient personality things from other ancient cultures. But Theophrastus has what has become an extremely important quote, and it kind of sets the pace for what we do. He says, "Why is it, while all Greece lies under the same sky, and all Greeks are educated alike, it has befallen us to have characters variously constituted?" In other words, you're born in the same place as a lot of other people. You live in the same environment. You probably eat a lot of the same food. You have a lot of experiences that are similar. But why, in turn, are we so different? That, as a researcher, is what really floats my boat and gets me excited about things. Now, I work at California State University, Fresno, not Fresno. Fresno is a small city of about 300,000 people. Actually, it's not that small. In terms of metropolitan areas, it's about the 5th largest metropolitan area in the state of California. I moved here from Michigan, much bigger city. I grew up in the Detroit suburbs, but I raised my children here. And all of my kids basically went from kindergarten through community college with the same people, going through the same classes and having the same experiences. But if you were to look at my children and their friends, you'd see all kinds of differences in personality. And the differences between people and why they are systematic is what intellectually gets me excited about my field. Gordon Allport is someone you're going to get to know a bit as we go through this semester. Allport is the father of modern personality psychology. He wrote the first textbook for a class in personality in the modern era. And so many people say that the formal study of personality in a scientific way started in 1937 with Allport's book, although there have been many other works that dealt with personality issues before that. It's kind of where the field formally started. I like to use Allport's definition of personality because even though it is very old, I think that it still has a lot of merit. And sorry, slide screwing up here. Allport says personality is the dynamic organization within the individual of those psychophysical systems that determine his or her, I made that politically correct, unique adjustments to the environment. Let's look at what Allport says in that definition. It's a short definition, but it's really highly, highly loaded. First of all, Allport says that personality is dynamic. Now, he's not talking psychodynamic. In fact, Allport was an avowed anti-Freudian. By dynamic, he means it functions and makes things happen in your body and mind to produce behavior. And it's organized in a way to help us think about the world. So personality is dynamic. Personality is also within the individual. We didn't stand in a line someplace sometime and individuals, passed out personalities. It's an inner characteristic. It's ours. Furthermore, Allport says, and I strongly agree with this one, that much of our personality is psychophysical. And much of our personality is also hardwired. This was a pretty bold statement in 1937, but it's kind of almost become mundane now in the field, and you won't get anyone disagreeing with it. We know, and we'll talk about later in our behavior genetics unit, that about 70% of the variation in the major personality scores are genetically inherited. We also know that much biology drives our behavior. One of my personality heroes, Jerome Kagan, has studied a personality trait called sensation seeking. And he has found sensation seeking is due to a lack of a brain chemical. That brain chemical, and you don't have to know this yet for the exam, is monoamylase oxide, or MAO. It's a mouthful. Individuals that lack MAO tend to seek out high-risk behaviors, thrills, things like that. Individuals with lots of MAO, well, they tend to be couch potatoes. They don't have this press to go out and do things. In fact, if you ever look at the fine print in the TV commercials for antidepressants, they'll frequently say, do not take this drug if you're taking an MAO inhibitor. Because one of the ways that clinicians help people who are depressed or have way too much MAO is to give them a drug that interferes with MAO production, so they get up and do something. Individuals that are extremely high on the sensation-seeking scale tend to like to do dangerous things, skydiving, surfing, bungee cord jumping, things like that. Because when you do one of these high-risk behaviors, it increases the level of MAO in your brain. So risk takers doing those types of behaviors essentially are self-medicating. My favorite personality trait, and you'll hear me talk about this probably way too much, but I can't help that one, is extroversion. And you'll learn later in the semester when we do our detailed lecture on this, that Eysenck found that extroversion is related to processing channels in the brain. And individuals that have fast brains that process information quickly are introverts, and individuals with slower brains are extroverts because it takes them longer to process stimulation. Works kind of the same way as Zuckerman's sensation seeking. Extroverts are always seeking stimulation because they need it to feel good. Introverts are always avoiding stimulation because it makes them feel bad. And there are lots and lots of other personality traits with psychophysiological substrates. Now, these organizations and these things within our personality and within ourselves and our physiology determine how we uniquely adjust and behave in different environments. Let's say that you go to a party this weekend, and you take your best friends. One of them is a flaming extrovert, and the other one is an extreme introvert. You get to the party, the extrovert looks and says, "Look at all the people. There's music. There's noise. Everybody's having a good time." The introvert looks and says, "Oh my God, look at all the people. There's noise, there's music. People are acting way too loud." And at the end of the evening, you pull your extroverted friend off of the chandelier they've been swinging on and peel your introverted friend off of the wall where the stimulation has just gotten to them. So different personalities in the same environment can potentially behave in an extremely different manner. Oh, there's the highlighted and red adjustments to the environment. Didn't move the slides fast enough. Must be one of my personality traits. Another important thing that we're going to talk about in class, because it has to do with developing the 5-factor model of personality, which we've talked a little bit about already in this presentation, but is now kind of the dominant trait model out there, started with the lexical assumption. And the lexical assumption is quite powerful. It makes the assumption that all important behaviors are encoded in the lexicon of a language as trait terms. And there are thousands of words that describe behavior in the dictionary. Interestingly enough, there's about twice as many words to describe negative behaviors as there are positive ones. And my hypothesis on that is it's more important to know who's going to get you in some nasty way than who's going to be nice to you. But if you think about it and just kind of take a blank piece of paper out and start making a list of all the words you know that describe behavior, you can get quite a list going. Sometimes in face-to-face versions of this class, I'll have students do that, and we'll have people write trait terms on the whiteboards of the classroom, and we won't have a hard time filling up 2 or 3 whiteboards because there are so many words in our language that describe the important behaviors. Now, interestingly enough, in other language where different characteristics are culturally more important, you find their lexicon is a little bit different. But we'll tackle that when we get to the cross-cultural personality unit. This has been a We Have Couches video production. Copyright 2020, Professor Michael Botwin, all rights reserved. Bye now.